lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise loud as the listening skies. Let them resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song loud, full of the faith that the dark past has brought us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. God of our wearies, God of our silent tears, Thou who hast brought us thus far. Along the way, shall let us beneath Thy hand. Let us forever stand true to our God, true to our native land. Sing a song full of the faith that our God you have brought us. Sing a song full of the hope our God you have taught us. Shadowed beneath Thy hand, may we forever stand true to our God, true to our native land.
The round of applause that you just gave to these two lovely women is what we in Jamaica call pian pian. So let's give them a resounding round of applause. Awesome. When our young people come around us, we must celebrate them, especially when they do things that are wonderful. And this pian pian clapping business, don't keep that working with me. So if you're hungry, big round of applause. Ladies, thank you. You know, if I was coming from outside, I would think that you were 6 feet tall. That voice. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Because, you know, in our community, we have so much talent in this community. So much. And, you know, we don't really embrace them the way we should and support them the way we should. And we have to start doing that. And if you think our community is not full of talent, you go to another ethnic group who is celebrating something and you come back and tell me if you enjoy yourself as much as when we are together. And when you come back and tell me that, I will be less inclined to tell you this. But our community is just fabulous. Welcome this afternoon. I'm glad all of you could join us because I know that there are so many other things happening in Toronto this afternoon that you could be at. But we are conscious people, and conscious people attend things that are purposeful, meaningful, and that will lead in a direction that is for the betterment of our community. Because as we individually thrive, we always have to look at that chain that circular chain, because the chain is as strong as its weakest link. So what we have to do is come together more and more on a regular basis, so we can have a conversation, because we don't live in a silo. And as Bob Marley quite eloquently said, as long as you're a black man, doesn't matter where you live, you're an African. And that is the motherland. Don't forget that. Because a person who does not know their roots and feel the confidence of blackness. You know, I was in Jamaica not too long ago, and there was a television program where people were there bleaching their skin. And I operate with like two lists. You're either mad or you're damn mad. So mad is like us. Damn mad is like those who would dare to bleach their skin with a chemical, because if you're lighter skin, you are supposed to be better looking and prettier. Because we have gone so far in our unconsciousness that we don't understand that when people, white people in particular, come down to Jamaica or anywhere else that's warm, they come down to look like us. If they call it tan, I call it black. So we have to develop a consciousness within ourselves so that we can pass on that consciousness. Because a lot of us are unconscious. We're really unconscious. We do not spend enough time to think about how we can make our community better. How we can help a fight, a purposeful fight that will better the community. Some of us just run and hide until the benefits come, then we come out and cheer. We're not asking you to jeopardize your jobs or your livelihood in order to support causes that benefits the collective community, but we want you to start to think in that direction. Without further ado, I am going to ask our lawyer, Dr. Monyanzwe Hemalengwa, to come to the podium and update us on the class action lawsuits.
We want Marcus Garvey, we want Marcus Garvey in Canada right now. Who do we want? Marcus Garvey. Who do we want? Marcus Garvey in Canada right now. Are you guys dead? When someone's trying to compose a song on the spot, you must applaud. Wala wala, wali wali, wala wala, Marcus Garvey, everybody. Wali wali, wala wala, wali wali, wala wala, Marcus Garvey, who do you want? Marcus Garvey, who do you want? Marcus Garvey, in Canada, right now, right now. My name is Munyondo Hamaleko. I'm a lawyer in Toronto. And we know there have been so many originals in our community. Perhaps there are 5 greatest originals in our community history. And Marcus Garvey stands among one of those 5 top originals. Even before anyone organized the African diaspora in history, it was Marcus Garvey who started the first universal African diasporic movement. Up to now, what Marcus Garvey started has not been equaled. True. He was the only person who organized blacks in whatever continent
and country in the world. What connection do you guys have with Colombian blacks, Ecuadorian blacks, Uruguayan blacks? Nothing. But Marcus Garvey managed to have branches in those countries. Hasn't been done before. The African National Congress of South Africa had branches all over the world, but only in relation to their cause in South Africa. But Marcus Garvey had the African diasporic cause. That's why you stand out as one of the giants in our community. That's why when I was invited to come and speak here this afternoon, I was expecting people to bring sleeping bags, bottles of water, canned food, because I cannot only speak for 10 minutes when it comes to Marcus Garvey. I expected to speak the whole night. Okay? Anyway, my role is very, very brief. I just want to tell you what I am doing in my little corner of the world. My little corner of the world to further the Marcus Garvey movement. Every one of us in our communities can do what we can do. I can only do so much as a lawyer. You can only do so much as a community activist, a dentist, a doctor, a teacher, a singer, and so on and so forth. But what I'm doing as a lawyer is spearheading the class action lawsuits that have been started by BATSI, Black Action Defense Committee, in furtherance of the fight against injustice that is in line with Marcus Garvey's work. The only way you can tackle injustice these days, in fact at any time, is not individual fights. How did Jamaica obtain its independence? How did Zambia obtain its independence? How did Nigeria and many other countries obtain their independence? Is by collective struggles. Can you obtain independence by one person's struggle? You cannot. How did women achieve the right to have an abortion? How did the civil rights movement manage to force mighty governments to give them the voting right? How did the slaves free themselves? How do every group free themselves? Through collective struggles. Most of you have been discriminated against individually, most of you have been discriminated against individually, but when the results come, when you win that individual struggle, the victory is incremental. It's not broad. And the very next day, you will be discriminated against again, you will be racially profiled again, because there is no broader victory, there's no broader impact, there's no community impact on your individual victory. Only very few individual struggles lead to broad remedies. The school children in the United States who were given unequal schooling opportunities only secured broader victories by a class action lawsuit started by the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Every injustice in the modern world that has gone through the courts has been supported by interveners or have been class action lawsuits. That is the history. That is the reality. And that's why BATSI decided to start these class action lawsuits, because it is the only way you can secure broader victories with broader remedies and impacts. The proof is in the eating. The eating is the evidence that you have, which is women's victories, Native Canadians' victories in the courts, all victories by same-sex couples. They have not been individual struggles. They have been class actions. The G20, they have just been given now certification to proceed with their class action lawsuits. Individual suits failed. The gas explosion in Ontario a few years ago has only now been approved for payment because it started as a class action lawsuit. We have Section 15 of the Charter protecting us and many other groups. The only issue that has not succeeded in the Supreme Court of Canada involves discrimination on the basis of race. Why has it not succeeded is because we fight individual struggles. Every other ground of discrimination under Section 15 of the Charter has succeeded. Equality for women, Native Canadians, same-sex, and other analogous grounds have all succeeded in the Supreme Court of Canada except us. That's why we decided to go by way of class action lawsuits, because numbers count. And right now we are looking for more individuals who have been stopped on the highways or prevented from leaving wherever they had parked by the police, where there are indicia of racial profiling and carding. If you have been carded, meaning you have received a card from the police for driving or for anything, and you are never criminally charged, and they kept that on you, we want to hear from you. And also, if you have been racially profiled and charged but acquitted, where there is an indicia of racial profiling, we want to hear from you. We have stopped, or we are trying to stop fighting individual battles. For the first time, people, let's unite in one class action lawsuit to try to stop the injustices that we suffer individually and as a community. That's how the civil rights movement succeeded in some of their struggles. Still a lot of challenges, but they succeeded. That's how we won our independence, by collective struggles. That's how women won their whatever freedoms and liberties and rights they enjoy because of collective struggles. That's how same-sex couples and individuals won their struggles by class action lawsuits, not individual actions. And if you want to see me to get my particulars, you can please approach me as I'll be sitting there. Now, before I sit down, I want to take a brief commercial moment. Let's call it a commercial break. I have an individual who has suffered massive injustice in this room. Most of us have suffered massive injustices, but she decided to put this injustice in a book form. That's another avenue of struggle, by the way. Don't sit on your story. Have insights. This lady has decided to write a book called To Kill a Naked Bird, an exotic dancer's story of framer, persecution, and injustice in Canada's courts. At the back of this book, the front is like this, and I'll have a copy there if you want to look at it more. At the back it says, a customer's delusional obsession turns into resentment and then hatred toward a stripper he can only dream of having. His twisted desire for revenge explodes into a bizarre lawsuit designed to ruin her. A corrupt lawyer, a biased judicial system, and a racist club owner propel the woman into a life-threatening maelstrom. Trafficked, extorted, and stalked by shadowy figures, she fights to hang on to her livelihood, her sanity, her life. But in the process, she also embarks on a journey of self-discovery and a quest for social justice. What do you do when your lawyer and the courts are antagonistic to your interests? Who can you trust and who must you guard against? Who are the players in this real-life story of a woman caught up in a stigmatized occupation, an exploitative entertainment industry, and an unjust legal system, serving a hypocritical mainstream culture? Ladies and gentlemen, give an applause for the life story written in this book by none other than Thelma Basel from Jamaica. You can talk to Thelma anytime you want to, please. She's here, and she'll tell you where to buy this book, a real true story, an inspiring story. Her story went all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada, and she's still fighting.
Who do you want in Canada? Marcus Garvey in Canada. Right now, we want Marcus Garvey. You want Marcus Garvey in Canada. Right now.
Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you, Dr. Hemalengwa. Anybody has a burning question or two for Dr. Hemalengwa that you'd like to ask now? Going once?
So you cover all injustices? Do you cover all injustices? Meaning, like, do you have any categories that just about driver's licenses, or do you, by any chance, cover people being rejected by mainland security going into the States after they've gone to the States how many years, but from one time in their life down because of dug up records or whatever, you know.
No, you come on, you're the one.
Right now, we really want to start small. We have started small. We are concentrating on people who have been carded and who also have been racially profiled. Just need to come to us, we'll assess your case. It's a class action lawsuit. We want as many people as possible. Maybe down the road, we'll deal with that. But at the same time, as we collect information from people, we will know those who have been discriminated in housing, in employment, and other areas. We'll create a data bank, and then there will be a series of individual class action lawsuits pertaining to specific areas where our people are most vulnerable. But the carding and racial profile is the beginning.
How many cases have you brought in front of the Supreme Court and won to this date right now? Or when did it start? When did you start doing this?
Well, we started last November. We have 3 cases right now. One is against PIO, Police Services Board, where our people who live in PIO have been carded and racially profiled, have filed a suit. We also have one in Toronto, and we also have one covering inmates, black inmates in all federal institutions across the country. So we have 3 going on. And we have met a judge, by the way, at a case conference. The judge says we must use the Brown versus Board of Education case of 1954 in the United States. So we are on the right track so far, but we need community support.
Thank you, Dr. Hemelengwa. Another thing sometimes our community gets bogged down with is that, you know, we always have this thing, we're not going to win. The bottom line is sometimes just to throw that salvo, to let them know you're attentive to what's being done to you that's an injustice. You have already won, because you're serving notice that I am not going to take this sitting down. And you know, when I came to Canada in 1971, my husband came in 70, and he thought that I had to have a nice car to drive based on where I work, etc., etc. But that car, he couldn't drive 1 mile without being stopped by 2 or 3 policemen. And that's a fact. And thanks to Dudley Laws and Charles Roach and Lennox Farrell and those guys. And there's so many people in our black community who got on radio to say that Dudley Laws did not speak for them, that eventually we made t-shirts that said, Dudley Laws speaks for me. So we're coming, it's a journey. We're on this journey that sometimes when we start walking, some of the very people in our communities are the ones who trip us up. But notwithstanding that, that's happening from the days of slavery, and that'll never end. But at the same time, we still have to resist and do what is just and what is right. And you know, life is not arithmetic. It can't be half right. It's either right or it's wrong. So if something is happening that you think is wrong, then we should collectively address it. We marched in the 70s, we marched in the 80s, now we're marching into courts. What's wrong with that? I think that's a very, very positive step. We just need people to march with us in the courts. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce to you the Consul General of Jamaica, which is our keynote speaker, Mr. Seth George Ramakan, and his lovely wife, Dr. Lola Ramakan. Will you please stand and give a round of applause? Lord, I must have gotten to you. No more thank you, applause. This is awesome. CG, I am going to turn the mic over to you now, sir. CG is always with us, through thick and thin. Although he looks so refreshed right now, he was here last night until late, because last night we celebrated Jamaica's 52nd Independence Gala here at the center. And sir, we thank you so much for coming out to join us this afternoon. If we don't say thank you enough, we thank you and we appreciate you. Would you please take the mic? Thank you.
Mrs. Van Steele, President of the Jamaica Diaspora Candy Foundation, and of course, a leader in Van C. Van C may sound in a sense because it has the word bad and C, but in these days, the terminology, when you bad, you're bad, is quite terminology, because what it means is that you really stand up. You're a person who can stand up for justice, and that is what Fancy has become to be known for. And I greet Dr. Mwalengwa. I hope I have not forwarded your name, sir. And I thank you for the remarks that you have made, very edifying and very timely, vital information that our community needs. And I greet the many leaders and organizers of this event celebrating the 100th anniversary of the work of the Right Honorable Marcus Garvey, national hero, Jamaica's first national hero, and a man who is probably the most underestimated world figure for reasons we know why, but which should not remain that way as we move forward. Just this past Wednesday, there was a great world summit held in Washington by the invitation of the President of the United States, President Barack Obama. And the effort was to bring together leaders from across the continent of Africa to sit with the leaders in the United States of America. The meeting was practically arranged because America felt itself as being in trouble, that it seemed to have neglected a very important issue that somehow for decades have evaded its leader. And that was the importance of Africa to America. America was not alone in its efforts and bid, because over recent years, world powers such as Europe and China and others have been making their bid in order to get their relationships right with Africa. Because more and more it is becoming clear to world leaders that Africa is the next frontier of development in the world, and that to ignore Africa in your foreign policy is to do so to your own peril. It is very interesting that this significant meeting between the leaders of the United States and the leaders of Africa is taking place in the year 2014, the year that celebrates the 100th anniversary of the work of Marcus Garvey. It may not seem significant to the leaders who met, because nowhere in the dialogue and discussions that I have seen has the name of Marcus Garvey been raised. And it appears to me that, again, to their own, and I want to be as diplomatic as I can, I want to be as careful as I can in saying what is true. But it is to their shame that they have not made the connection between this historic move by the United States and the work of Marcus Garvey, that began in 1914. It is of significance because 2014 does not celebrate only the 100th year of the work of Marcus Garvey. It also celebrates the 100th year of World War I. And many pundits and analysts have already been advocating and striking strong similarities between the events of 1914 that led to World War I. They're seeing the similarities. They are seeing that there is a repeat, almost, of the events leading up to World War I and the events that are leading up to the unprecedented number of wars that are taking place today in 2014. So they're not without historical reference. They're not without the ability to make comparisons. So why is it that a historical time like this, when the very work that was begun by Marcus Garvey, and which is recorded and has turned out to be the most significant world event, world leadership for the black peoples of the world, it still remains. As much as we acclaim and recognize the historic development of a black president of the United States in our time, it does not equate. It does not equate to the tremendous work that was done on behalf of the black peoples of the world by Marcus Garvey. I want us to know that. As a Jamaican, son of the soil, where Marcus Garvey was born, and where the UNIA was formed, and the base from which he launched, in order to reach out to places like Central America, the Caribbean, the United States, Britain, Canada, and other parts of the world. I am here to register a very strong reminder that the world might have thought that it can ignore the contributions of this giant to the upliftment of people who are oppressed. Because I want to make the point that although Marcus Garvey is noted and recorded, and quite rightly so, as giving leadership to the advancement of the black peoples of the world, that must not be misconstrued to say that all that Marcus Garvey was concerned about were the oppression of black people. Marcus Garvey stood up for the oppressed, whether they were black or whatever color they were. It happened that because of the oppression of slavery and the maligning of the black race, that was the urgent population for which he stood. But at his heart and in his writings, wherever people were, that injustice was being meted out to them, Marcus Garvey stood up for that. And I dare say, as I would like to bring out in this presentation, that beyond Marcus Garvey is a nation called Jamaica. A nation that is known for standing against oppression. The work of Marcus Garvey must not be isolated from the work of Nanny of the Maroons. It's a Jamaican tradition. We must understand the context. Marcus would have known very well of the work of Nanny and Kojo. And Bogle. And many of the national heroes. But in the midst of colonialism, when slavery was at its height, today we celebrate women leadership. But I want you to understand the context of a woman leadership in the Jamaican context. When a woman by the name of Nanny, after experiencing, along with her people, the oppression of the British regime and the British Army, recall that Britain was the superpower of the world at that time. And when they began to stand up for their rights, the army was sent in. The army, in order to suppress them. And it was this woman who stood up and gave leadership to a group of people who had no arms. No arms. All they had were their brain and their hands and the bush. The bushes in which they had to live. And you talk about tactics. You talk about brains. You talk about abilities. Do you know how armies work? They sit down in a war room and they plan strategies. And this woman with her bare hand and her people were able to take on the superpower army of the world and to defeat them. I wonder if you understand your roots and who you are as a people, and the greatness, the seeds of greatness that are planted in your veins, and that what you saw in Marcus Garvey did not begin with Garvey. It is a root with a greatness. It is only that Garvey decided that he would exhibit it, but each one of us in this room and those outside of the room, that greatness is in your veins. And each one of us can manifest that greatness in our individual circumstances in order to celebrate this man who we speak of today. That is the celebration that we need. The celebration is not singing songs and giving accolades. The celebration is to manifest the greatness in our individual lives. That is how we celebrate Marcus Garvey, by demonstrating that he has given leadership and shown us that there is greatness in us, and we too must be great. That is the challenge that is thrown out to us. Marcus Garvey worked in the most difficult times. You and I are living in times when there are laws now that are made, and there are human rights laws that protect us. When Marcus Garvey was around, there was no human rights law. Black people were known as chattel. They were to be used in the books, in the laws of the United States of America. Black people were not human beings. They were no different from the cattle, beasts of burden. So that we have a better environment and a better circumstance in which to work. And it is so a shame if we are not using the gifts that are given to us. And we must speak to our young people, those who are coming up who are further disconnected from Marcus Garvey. We would have known more about him, but their generations who are going to come were much farther away from him. And we have a duty to say to those or younger ones, have you ever heard of Marcus Garvey? What do you know about him? So let me tell you a few things. Where you are today is because of the work of men like Marcus Garvey. Let me explain to you how Garvey connects with your life. Garvey is not just a historical figure. He's not just a person in a book. Garvey is a person who touches your life because of his work. And I want to say this, and I say it publicly, that we can acknowledge it. The emergence of a black president of the United States is a result of seeds that were planted by Marcus Garvey. We cannot fully appreciate the emergence of Barack Obama as President of the United States if we do not understand how Marcus Garvey's work inspired the work of persons like Martin Luther King. The BBC carried a whole documentary showing, expressing, it was not a full documentary on that particular subject, but in the documentary made mention of how Garvey's work inspired Martin Luther King. And in fact, on his visit to Jamaica, that is the visit of Martin Luther King, on his visit to Jamaica, back in, I'm just trying to find it, I made a note of it here. Some of you will remember. It's 66? Back in 66. Back in 66, Martin Luther King made public acknowledgement of the role that Marcus Garvey played in his life. So what we're saying, we're not trying to make up a story. We're not trying to say, like, we're not trying to look good. We're not here trying to concoct. We're here speaking clearly about what is true and what must be known. Because we don't hear Garvey's name being called in all of what is happening in the United States. But this is our duty. This is our duty. Because we have taken it on to say this great hero is being downplayed. And so we have to take on the challenge of bringing out those facts that others who have neglected to bring it to world attention, that they can feel that, oh, so others know, well, we better start talking about it. Because that's how you get these things going. Marcus Garvey, back in the very early 1900s, was able to have a membership of the UNIA of over 4 million. 4 million. The membership of UNIA grew to 4 million and more persons. Do you know what that means when you didn't have Facebook? Today many people are trying to get membership. What do you understand what we're dealing with here? And what do you understand in the magnitude of the man? The greatness of the man? Marcus Garvey was able to be the fees coming in and with the money raised over 600 million US dollars. Hold on. You know, 600 million US dollars would be equivalent to, in today's value, if you were to try to work that out. You know how much billion that turns out to be? That's the magnitude of the man. A man who did not have access to the things that we have access to today. So I want to say, as we celebrate the 100th year of Marcus Garvey, I want to turn that around to speak, and when I speak of Jamaicans, don't misunderstand me. I speak of Jamaicans, particularly black people of Jamaica, because they are the ones who were enslaved and brought in and treated in a particular way from Africa. But remember, what Marcus Garvey did, he educated himself. Remember that. He was not just a man who had a lot of issues, and because of his issues, he's trying, I can't read, but this is when he's 69. Yes, you have the words there of what was, okay, good. I wanted to read it, Marcus Garvey's own statement, but it's all right. He educated himself. He was a man going to school. And he went and he did his studies in history and philosophy, because in order for you to be able, you see, look, here's what I don't like, I don't want to see. I don't like and I don't want to see our people, that the only way we can express ourselves is to go there and block the road. We must equip ourselves to go into the arena of ideas and contend, because up till today the most powerful weapon is still the pen. And the most fertile battleground is a battle of the mind. And when you conquer the mind, you conquer everything. And I want us, therefore, to put the effort out to make ourselves knowledgeable. That when we speak from facts, we speak from reason, and we are able to argue with whoever he or she thinks he or she is, and to bring out the arguments in a manner that people look on. I want today, in celebrating the 100th year of Marcus Garvey, to really commend the millions upon millions of white people who, because of reason and understanding, have gone beyond this color barrier that is still holding back a lot of uncivilized people. And look now at the quality of the person, so that in a country where you have a majority of white folks, well, it's changing a bit, but you can go and vote for a Barack Obama. It doesn't have to be that it's boy because it's more black people why he won the election. That's not it. The battle of the mind. When you conquer the mind and you have dethroned a seared conscience, you are able to win wars. That's how wars must be fought. That's how wars must be fought. And that's where the weapons of our warfare, because I'm a Christian minister, the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. The weapons of our warfare are weapons that are spiritual, intellectual, and that's how we fight them. And so as I close in making these comments, because believe me, I really haven't gone through my notes in them. No. From the heart, man. From the heart, man. I just see I stand up here and talking. Yes, sir. Speaking straight from the heart. Because I want you to understand that the baton has been handed over to us. And that the race is not over. And that there are many hurdles. This is a race with hurdles you're going to have to jump over while you're going after it. And you and I must be prepared. Here was Martin Luther King's speech, he and his wife, Coretta Scott King. On visiting Jamaica, they visited Garvey's shrine on June 20, 1965, and laid a wreath. In a speech, he told the audience that Garvey was the first man of color to lead and develop a mass movement. He was the first man on a mass scale and level to give millions of Negroes a sense of dignity and destiny and make the Negro feel he was somebody. That is Martin Luther King word about Jamaica's national hero, Marcus Garvey. So we can't have to, but a man like Martin Luther King, we be celebrating the way he celebrated. It's celebrating. Martin is celebrating Garvey. And we're not. It's quite a tragedy. So I urge you, the fight is still on, and I tell you why. We spoke of Nanny, and we spoke of many others of the heroes of Jamaica. But it is a Jamaica thing to stand up for human rights across the world. And that is why, when apartheid was at its height in South Africa, and the world was looking on and wondering what to do about this monster, Jamaica, because of the seed of greatness planted in us and our heart for dismantling anything that is oppressive to human beings, Jamaica was the first country in the world to place sanctions against South Africa. Consider the fact. Consider the fact. We're not a country with a big economy. We're not a country with big armies. But we are a country with a big courage. And we, although it looks like when a little mother dog is barking after a big cow, although it's how it might have looked, we had the guts to place sanctions against South Africa, no matter what would have happened. And as a result, the rest of the world followed what we did and also placed sanctions. That is the spirit of Marcus Garvey. That is the nature of the Jamaican people. We acted like a superpower when we did that. And that is why when our athletes go overseas and they are into the race, because they know who they are, they will go out there and they will run the race. And they not only come first, they also come second, and they also come third. Nothing startles me like the day I saw a race where Usain Bolt was in the race and these many other people. And Usain made a false start. And they went back. And when he made another false start. And they took him out of the race. And when they took Usain Bolt out of the race, I saw the sigh of relief upon the faces of the many athletes from across the world that Usain is out now. We can win. And then the race went off. And when the race was over, Jamaica still got gold. Still got gold. That was the day I came to know Johan Blake. Because I didn't even know that he was in the race. That's how it is for us. That's how it is for us. That's how we are as a people. At the beginning of the millennium, when the year 2000 broke in, the world was looking for a song to become the song of the millennium. Now consider that a millennium is 1,000 years, and that Jamaica was not even 50 years old. Consider that there are countries in the world that are 3,000 years and 4,000 years of history. You can find about them. And yet, they searched across the world looking for a song of the millennium. And at the end of the day, the song of the millennium was a song by Jamaica's Bob Marley. One love, one heart. The song of the millennium. And as if that were not enough, they also wanted an album of the millennium. And so you thought that since the song came from Jamaica, and there are so many artists and musicians, the Mozarts, and all the others throughout time, and now we're looking for an album. When the day came, the album came from Jamaica. What do you call this, coincidence? It's not. There's something about Jamaica. Why, when I went to the University of Guelph in 2010 and met a number of scientists who were doing research in agriculture, who came and said to me and asked me, along with the Minister of Agriculture of Jamaica who was visiting, they said, you know, we are doing a project here and we would like to know, just your view on this, but we have been doing research on Jamaican ginger and we can't seem to find out why it is that the ginger from Jamaica is 9 times more potent than the next best ginger in the world. They said we thought it was the soil. So we went to Jamaica and we grew it in a hydroponics method. That is, growing it outside of the soil to see what would be the difference. But it was still 9 times more potent. And we took the same plant outside of Jamaica to grow it elsewhere. And it was not 9 times more potent. And we just don't know yet. We're still trying to find out. So they asked whether we had any ideas as to why this is so. I said, we too are very perplexed. All we can say is the same thing with the athletes, it's the same thing with the coffee, it's the same thing with so many other things, 9 times more potent. And if you don't think it's true, you check the records. On a per capita basis, Jamaica has produced more Miss Worlds. So are women too. And that is why you find the Jamaica woman, special woman. I'm glad we're locked up in a room. I'm glad I'm not outside being exposed and saying these things. This is a little family talk. But I thank you very much for inviting me to be here. Happy 100th anniversary of Marcus Garvey.
How are you? We will.
Thank you, CG. Would you please give him another round of applause? We, the descendants of Mother Africa that went to Jamaica, you know the things we do. I just saw it up. I saw it set up. The ginger, I just saw it up. You just have to rock and roll with it, you know? And take it as it comes. Because as we say at home, we're little, but we tall. And we can't ever forget that. And you know, some of us come here and sometimes we forget the culture of home. And somebody was talking to me the other day and was telling me about a situation that occurred with him. And he was telling me, you know, I can't stand dealing with somebody that has that tendency to be dishonest. I said, you know, I'm not an intellectual talk. Tell me, say my robber. Because that's how we set up a yard. You tell somebody that somebody is a robber. You know, in thief. Easy, simple, simple language. Don't take it off course. Let's just have a conversation. And all the other islands have their quirks too, and when we talk, everybody has their little idiosyncrasies that work. It's called plain language, and it's intoxicating and it's understood. CG, I could listen to you all day. This was wonderful. And you know something, we have to get together and talk, because when you talk, you learn. When you sit down and you listen to CG and you listen to Dr. Hemalengwa, don't tell me that you have not learned something. And that's the beauty about gathering here, so that we can have a conversation. Because we are on a journey. And the journey we are on is not finishing. It's not a senseless journey, it's an endless journey. And as we journey on, we have to get others, especially the younger people, to join in the usefulness of the journey. And before I bring on Mr. Winston Harding, are you here and ready, Mr. Harding? Oh, wonderful. Before I bring on Mr. Harding, I am going to read you something from the philosophy and opinions of Marcus Garvey. Just nuggets of information, because this is like a teaching that we are helping each other as we cross the river. Okay. Government is not infallible. Government is only an executive control, a centralized authority for the purpose of expressing the will of the people. Before you have a government, you must have the people. Without the people, there can be no government. The government must be, therefore, an expression of the will of the people. There is also a section here in the book where the United Negro Improvement Association needed funds. And Marcus Garvey, like so many of our heroes, including Bob Marley, were men well ahead of their time, who really sat down and really thought about the things they were going to say and the things they were going to do. And you can't deny that the reason why we are able today to continue to speak of Marcus Messiah Garvey is because all of the things that he told us and spoke of then are true today. He talked about coming together to make sure that we create our own destiny, because that's very, 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 very important. A lot of us believe that we cannot control what happens to us. And even with bumps in the way, we can control what happens to us. Here is another little section I want to read to you from the Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey. Society and the selfish exploiter and plunderer. Those who make or accumulate their wealth by robbing, exploiting, and plundering the innocent, ignorant and helpless of humanity are worse than murderers and hardened criminals. They are fiends and should be outlawed and ostracized from the society, caring not how munificent their after gifts and philanthropy to care for those they have already morally destroyed or harmed. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Winston Hardy.
Good evening, Council, ladies and gentlemen. I want to talk to you today about your dreams, about your aspirations, about Marcus Messiah Garvey's dreams and accomplishment. Your dreams are possible, just like Marcus. Start operating out of a larger vision for yourself. Garvey has laid a foundation, and that's why we are here today, to celebrate his legacy. What shall be your legacy? What are you preparing your legacy to be? Marcus Messiah Garvey succeeded because he knew where he was going. It is possible that you can make your dreams come true. Yeah. You can bring your greatness to the universe. It is possible. It is your time now. It is your time now. Marcus Messiah Garvey has done tremendous things for the black family in the universe. He lived his purpose in life. Take a page of his life and start living yours. I want you to know that your dreams are possible. Start following the footsteps of Marcus Garvey. Many great leaders travel the same path like Marcus Messiah Garvey. The world is failing to understand that Marcus Messiah Garvey was before Dr. Martin Luther King. Before Dr. Martin Luther King, there was Marcus Messiah Garvey. Before Nelson Mandela, there was Marcus Messiah Garvey. Before Malcolm X, there was Marcus Messiah Garvey, a pioneering and courageous leader for the black man. Some call him Black Moses, some call him prophet. He surged ahead with his plan to emancipate the black man. Where roots consciousness lay buried and seen by many awakened giants of any time, Garvey planted his feet. There in his mind coexisted and nourished. His calling to his black brothers and sisters to take a stand for themselves, to emancipate the mind, the soul, and body, was love in motion. His word was not driven by hate, but by substance towards the black family. Great cities of the world were his stage. New York, Paris, Kingston, Costa Rica, London. Garvey said, no tree can grow without roots. He said, read, search history for the truth. You have greatness within you, just like Marcus Garvey. Though a cloud overshadow his power and drive, his vigor, his accomplishment. He is known across the globe. Marcus Garvey is known. So I say to you today, it is necessary for you to know your dreams, to know your goals, to know your purpose in life. It is necessary. Where roots consciousness lay buried and seen by many awakened giants. Of any time Marcus planted his feet. Marcus was an immensely driven man. His companion in standing were Booker T. Washington, who invited him to the States. Malcolm X, W.E.B. Du Bois, Frederick Douglass, Mahatma Gandhi, Dr. Martin Luther King, Jackie Robinson, Harriet Tubman, Sir Journal Truth, Nanny of their compound, Nat Turner, Louis Aiden, naming a few. Their vision like his, flies like his, standing for humanity. In other lands, they were Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, and Patrice Lumumba of Liberia. But in shades of clothing, deliver their gifts like this to society. There was a clouding. Council spoke about that. But Garvey was born in St. Anne's, Jamaica in 1987. He is Jamaica's first national hero. His monument stands amongst the great heroes and she-heroes of Jamaica. He stood graceful and proud, a man of talent and understanding. A man standing with endless energy, toiled for his people. Garvey lived at a time when most black people across the globe were poor and oppressed. They didn't feel good about themselves because their rights and expectations were non-existent. Garvey stood his ground. His body carried a message, defining beauty like the rising sun. The cloud vanished not in his sight, but applauded. For within the darkest night, the endless maze of his warm strokes even the sleeping mare from afar. No sorrow, pittiness, trembling of feet, or discouragement could cause him to stay still, though weary. For strange land was his endeavor, the land of Africa. Africa's Garvey's forceful voice could be heard. Africa is my home. Africa for African. And I am an African. Nobody can speak the way you speak. Nobody can sing the way you sing. You matter. Stretch yourself. Do not settle for less. It is necessary that you live your dreams. Do not give up on your dreams. Easy is not an option. You're here. Establish yourself in this society. You're here. It is your time now. Marcus Garvey did what Marcus Garvey did across the globe in research. No one else, black man, has done in my research. Contented not in his heart to stay still, he led masses of people to come to know themselves in the United States of America and the world at large. He unshattered the strides of those whose hearts followed clouded shadows of doom. Garvey was firm in saying that obtaining and maintaining economic strength is the hope of the black man. He encouraged black people to be self-reliant and have pride in their history and themselves. Heard he has been. He worked towards economic achievement, standing strong for his people, not fluttering, saying, without economic strength, what purpose is life? You saw the road, Marcus Garvey. You saw the road ahead. Quick and brave as he was, scorned by some of his brothers and sisters for the path taken, he saw the road ahead. Cowards funeral, they come a many. Leaders, they come a few. Garvey, descendants of Maroon from St. Anne's, arrived with love. Behold Garvey, a man said, the man that wants to lead his people out of bondage. Smile thou, for God is opening his hands for you. God is opening his hands for me. Therein is a rose. In 1914, at age 27, Garvey started the Universal Negro Improvement Association in Jamaica. In 1920, it became the largest black organization at the time. He founded the People's Political Party in 1929. Garvey was faced with obstacles after obstacles, yet he remained focused on his goal. So I'm saying to you today, know your dreams, stay focused on your goal. It's your time now. Garvey left the foundation, it's your time now. Garvey's philosophy, race pride, self-reliance, the need for African unity. His mission was to make Africa accessible and to defend the blacks the world over. Garvey published The Negro World in 1918. It became one of the most important papers in the United States of America. Garvey Black Star Liner steamship was the first for a black man. He bought 3 ships as a foundation of his company. He established the Negro Factory Corporation, the Black Cross Nurseries, the African Legion. In 1938, he founded the School of African Philosophy to train leaders. Garvey's organization peaked at 6 to 11 million in 1921, with 859 branches in over 30 countries across the globe. Gentlemen, ladies, this was the time of Garvey. There were no technology. There were donkey time. And Garvey had 11 million people across the globe in 30 countries. He founded the Black Eagle Flying Corps. Garvey's UNIA organization voted to create a free republic for over 400 million blacks of Africa. Garvey was before his time, but any time was good for him. Garvey's message, one God, one aim, one destiny, lives on even to this day. He lived a life of purpose, a life of standing for our cause. He was firm on his purpose. Garvey is clear with his message. Look back and help for humanity's sake. Measure your charity by the acts of others towards you while you're climbing. Forget not the past with all the goods and his reports. Contemplate your future by the experience you have had. You must strive to live. Strike hard and sure. Quoted Garvey. Garvey was a reservoir of hope in seizing the momentum for black economic success. a champion where only angels dare to tread. Now is your time to go out and claim your dreams. Claim your purpose. Establish yourself in this land. You have tremendous power. Your time to tap into your cherished dream is now. It is necessary that you do so. It is necessary that you focus on your goal. It is necessary that you help your brothers and sisters along the way. It is possible that you will be successful. Go forward with an abundance of grace. Your time is now. Go forward. So I say to you today, as I leave, I say to you, march on, brothers, march on, sisters. The fight is on, my brothers and sisters. A new day dawn. Your dreams are possible. The world awaits your coming. Yes. March to your glorious shores. March on. March on. Yes. Till your days are done. March on. March to your full potential until destiny calls. The world knows not the strength of your heritage. The time has come for you to speak. Up gallantly, you mighty men and women. Up from your slumber. Rise. Your time is now. The battle must be fought with wisdom, education, faith, love, and knowledge. Keep your eyes on your goal. Strive for your golden shores. Your time to advance to glory is now. March on, brothers. March on, sister. Your time to sparkle is now. God bless you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, another round of applause for Mr. Harvey. I hope you're learning with me as you go along. Thank you very much. We have now come to the history of Garvey and the UNIA in Toronto, and this is going to be delivered by Dr. Maurice Vibrant. Dr. Vibrant.
Thank you very much, Valerie. Councilor General Ramakan, Mrs. Ramakan, friends, members. Let me tell you up front, right before I start, I have a dilemma. I think you all know it. I was initially given 15 minutes for my presentation. Yesterday, I was told they take away 8 more minutes, so we take away 8 minutes, so now I'm down to just 7 minutes to do it. This morning, while trying to cut down my speech, Mr. Ken Bougiel called me and he said to me he was to be here to talk about Marcus Garvey's UNIA initiatives in Montreal. Unfortunately, he could not attend, and he's asked me if I could say something for him. So now I think I'm down to about 3 minutes, so I'll try to read as quickly as I can. Mr. Bougiel said he was a witness during the Sir George Williams uprising in Montreal. And the UNIA, all established in Montreal by Marcus Garvey, was the only place of refuge where the students who were arrested could find an opportunity to get some guidance and some assistance, both economically and also otherwise. By the way, Malcolm X's parents met at UNIA convention in Montreal. That's where they met. Marcus Garvey was born in Jamaica. He died in London, England in 1940, the year of my birth in Jamaica. He left school in Jamaica at the age of 14, the very same age that I left Jamaica to come to Canada. Please, I'm not saying that I am Marcus Garvey incarnate. The similarities stop right there. When I left Jamaica, the history I knew was about Sir Walter Raleigh, Christopher Columbus, Drake, Magellan, and all those. I knew nothing about Marcus Garvey. It wasn't being taught at that time. I'm glad and happy to know that now it is being taught in the curriculums. The only thing I can recall before leaving Jamaica as incidents of bravery was the story about the master who was being driven in his chariot. He was pursued by a pack of wolves, and the driver jumped off the chariot to be devoured by the wolves to save his masters, and that was considered an action of bravery. In my mind, I don't believe it was, because I think it was probably one of our people driving that chariot. Marcus Garvey was a political leader. He was a publisher, journalist, and a strong believer in Black African nationalism. His ultimate goal was to unite, educate, and repatriate blacks to Africa, thereby ridding Africa of European colonial powers. He did not succeed totally. However, he was very inspirational, and many civil rights activists were to follow him. His philosophies inspired groups, the likes of the Nation of Islam, the Rastafarian movements, etc. Marcus Garvey established in the UNIA in Toronto, Canada, around 1926. It was at 355 College Street. Surprisingly, just south of the UNIA was what we called then Jewtown, better known as Kensington Market area, with a history that went in a totally different direction, upwards and onwards, as opposed to what we had in Toronto. The UNIA Hall in Toronto had a rich history. It was a mecca for blacks in Toronto. It was the only place where black people could congregate except for the three churches, First Baptist, the African Methodist, and the British Methodist churches. It was a place where black porters working for the CNR or the CPR would gather for their meetings. It was a place where the Black Cross nurses established by Marcus Garvey would have their meetings. They would have their celebrated marches, which began at the UNIA Hall, and they would proceed on college towards Canaanland Avenue. Programs for young people took place at that particular hall. It was a place, the only place where there were opportunities, where opportunities were provided, where new arrivals could get support, thereby making their assimilation quicker and easier. The UNIA was also a place for the credit union. That's where we deposited her savings. The UNA Hall was most popular and probably the only spot for dances, recitals, and many other social events in Toronto at that time. How can I forget the famous trips? The first Thursday in August, Port Dalhousie, sponsored through that organization. According to Judge Carter, our first black judge in Toronto, everybody in Toronto went on this trip to Port Dalhousie. If you did not go, you stayed at home. There was no place else for us to go. It would appear that the UNIA, not unlike many of our other organizations and businesses and communities, suffer the perils of sometimes dishonesty, mismanagement, and sometimes outright thievery, which usually leads to a slow and painful and regrettable death of our efforts. I would love to share with you what the Ashkenazi Jew sees in us as some of the reasons for our failures. I don't believe time is going to permit me to say that to do this, although go ahead. This is a picture that was taken from my wife's sister-in-law's Facebook. And this picture shows you the ascension of white people, Asian people, Mexican people, etc. And here, this picture shows you black people. What is most revealing is this is an interview. The Ashkenazi Jew, as you may know, came from Europe, Germany. I mentioned the Kensington, which is just south of UNA Hall. That's where we did our shopping, and most of the merchants were Jewish. The interviewer: why is the Negro so behind economically? The Ashkenazi Jew. Not only does the Negro have the slowest wit, he does not practice group economics. I don't necessarily agree. The only aspect, he continued to say, the only aspect of economics the Negro understands is consumption. He doesn't understand the importance of building wealth. The fundamental rule is to keep your money within your racial group. We build business Jewish, we hire Jewish, we spend Jewish, and buy Jewish. There is nothing wrong with that. But it's a basic rule that the Negro cannot comprehend and follow. His statistics: 93% of blacks killed in America are by other blacks. Statistics shows that Jews' money exchanges hands 18 times before leaving his community. Only 6% of his money goes back into his community. That's how Jews are on top. One in 104 Negro built businesses in America, and there is an inverse correlation with the percentage of prison population being at 51%, despite only 13% of the aggregate American population. The interviewer. The Negro's buying power in America is $1 trillion, $100 billion more than the entire GDP of Africa. And it's set to rise to $1.7 trillion by 2017, according to an analysis of economic experts. But what could the Negro do with $1 trillion a year? The Ashkenazi Jew. Well, instead of buying Louis Vuitton, Hermes, and Crystal, corporations that could influence politics in his own expense and are also not big fans of him. He could industrialize the whole of Africa, build national banks, rid majority of colonial banks and institutions on his continent by putting them out of business. This will make room for economic growth in Africa. He could hold on to more of his resources whilst actually selling them at market rates without the requirement to sell the rights. He could build a nuclear arsenal for a united Africa, invest in infrastructure, education, institutions, scientific research, and technologies, and technological innovations for his benefit. With $1 trillion, the Negro could rapidly catalyze Africa's ascent to becoming world power. The interview. What are your thoughts on the Negro's remarkable failure after 115 years? The Ashkenazi Jew, well, nothing is ever the Negro's fault. His compulsive habit of killing his own, his compulsive material consumption, his inabilities to build businesses and preserve wealth are usually somebody's fault. The interviewer. What can the Negro do to liberate himself from his economic plight? The Negro must take responsibility. The Negro must unite. He must build businesses. He must invest in his own institutions and infrastructure. He must keep money in his community, and he must learn to control his own means of production. Thanks for allowing me to share these views that I came across. It is said that this one picture represents many 1,000 words, but in my mind, it's more than just words. It was food for thought and an opportunity to think, for us to start thinking differently. I believe we as blacks have just as much intelligence, skills, and ability to do as other races. And by making just a few equipment changes, such as those suggestions by Marcus Garvey and many other leaders of the past and present, I believe we can win the race, or at least dead heat for the win. Thank you very much.
Thank Thank you, Dr. Byfield. Would you please give him another round of applause? Thank you. I sincerely hope that you are having a wonderful time just chilling and learning. Because you know, last week was Caravana, but this week is a teaching so that we can exercise the purposeful way in which we ought to move forward. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a break so you can visit the different booths around the room, and then we will come back for the second session, and that will begin with the art of living in harmony and cultivating a healthy mind, body, and environment by Miss Dawn James. So take a breather and let's exhale. Thank you so much. And our presenter will be Miss Dawn James. And Dawn is a daughter, wife, mother, mentor, author, speaker, sound healer, green living advocate who awakens the conscious being. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hand together for Miss Dawn James. Thank you very much.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm very honored to be here this afternoon. Very honored to have heard the speakers before me celebrating Marcus Garvey as an inspiration, as a leader, as a source of strength in our community. Today I want to have a conversation about one quote from Mr. Garvey, which I thought was very appropriate for this event. And he said, "Liberate the minds of men, and ultimately you will liberate the bodies of men." How do we liberate our minds? Now, if you go forward about 50 years, there's another quote from another gentleman with the same initials, MG. And he said, "Wake up, wake up, wake up. Get up, get up, get up." Now his name was Marvin Gaye. But the reason why I want to share his lyric with you is you cannot liberate the mind if you don't wake up. You can't liberate the body unless you get up. If you were to get up before you woke up, what would happen? You'd be walking in your sleep, you wouldn't know where you're going. And ladies and gentlemen, some of us may know some people today who are sleepwalking through life. They are sleepwalking through life because they haven't woken up to be aware and to be conscious. So today I want to have a conversation about living consciously. How did Mr. Garvey liberate his mind? What did it take for him to aspire to that level, to create what he did and reach so many people without Facebook? Okay, I heard 4 million, I heard 11 million. That's a lot of people to reach and connect and to cultivate without technology. That is immense what he did. We liberate our minds through knowledge. There's various ways to get knowledge and even be educated. Some of us went to the institution of school. We got formal education. You invest a couple $1,000s in a couple of years and you get a nice piece of paper and you put it in a frame. Other people learn from the institution called life, experiences, interactions. We can be educated through travel, going beyond your community, going to to other countries, understanding how the world works. There are many ways we can liberate our minds, not just through books. Mr. Garvey was an inspiration to millions of people because he understood the importance of sharing knowledge. He understood the importance of strengthening his community. I know in this community, in our community, we have many sources to go to for knowledge. Our elders, you know, granny, auntie, right? There's so much wisdom in our community. How many of your children have the honor of connecting with their grandparents? How many people have their grandparents still here? Okay? A great sense of knowledge and wisdom and experience. At break time, I was just speaking to a lady, and she said, you know what? I made sure when I went back home, right, my family members sent me back all these wonderful herbs and things, and I put it together. I felt like I was back home. Even though I'm here in Canada, I still maintain some of those values and some of those systems that work for us. It doesn't matter where we live, we're still African people. We come from a very strong place, a very creative people. We're strength in character, strength in values, strength in our bodies. And even though we're living here, we still need to maintain that. What I teach other people is all about how to be conscious, how to wake up your mind and be conscious of your thoughts, your actions, your words. Unless we pay attention to how we interact and behave, how can we aspire to that level of greatness or even attempt to get there if we're not conscious of what we're doing? Conscious living, one of the definitions, is when you are fully aware of your thoughts, your words, and your actions. You will discern and be able to know what is good for you and not good, what is healthy and what is not healthy. And if we're not conscious of even what we're bringing into our homes, what we're putting in our bodies, what are we feeding our minds, what are our children learning, what is going in their minds? It's very difficult to be a parent today in 2014. And one of the reasons for that is I don't see a lot of knowledge and wisdom being handed down. For many reasons. Sometimes those grandparents, those great aunts aren't there. They're not with your children. However, I also see technology has changed the quality and quantity of how we communicate with each other. I know some families, mom and dad are out working all day. The kids are at school, and if you really look at 24 hours in the day, those children may not have a quality conversation with their parents. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe an hour. How much time do we invest in having a quality conversation with each other? Connecting and sharing wisdom and knowledge. So as a people, we need to find that value system, as Mr. Garvey demonstrated, that allows us to connect to each other, uplift each other, and know we need to invest time and knowledge in each other. Another aspect of being conscious in this world is to recognize that as a people, as we heard earlier today, when we come together collectively, that is the strength that we can put behind what we're trying to achieve. It is very hard to make change in this country as an individual, as you know. I've known many beautiful people working in the education system as advocates for our children. I stress a lot about children. I have 3 children of my own, and I know without investing in them and teaching them and guiding them, they're going to be lost. They're going to have a very difficult time. So as a nation, as a community, I encourage you to support and spend time, mentor a child, teach our children the value of education and knowledge. You don't have to have a PhD to educate a child. As a matter of fact, between the age of 0 and 4, regardless of your education level, you teach a child about 6,000 things to do before they start school. How to walk, how to tie your shoe, use the bathroom, how to use a spoon. Think about all of the education you pass on to a child before they turn 4. So we have wisdom and knowledge. We need to share it. When you're conscious of your thoughts, when you're aware, you'll begin to identify what is going on in my society that does not or is not congruent with my values or my beliefs. What do I want to participate in and what do I not want to participate in? Mr. Garvey was able, despite the time in which he was born, he was able to pull a group of people together, form an association with values, and provide direction. We have so many more resources available to us 100 years later. And I ask you, are you using all of the resources that you have available to you? Earlier today, we heard about conscious living. We heard about the strength of the seed that supports the tree. And to me, we are all branches on that tree. Everybody in this room is a branch on that tree. But we have to remember there's a trunk. Branches don't just hang out by themselves. There's a trunk that supports the branch. That is our community. That could represent Africa. And what supports the trunk of the tree is the roots. The roots of the tree. All of those leaders that went before us. And the seeds that planted that tree, as we said earlier today. The strength, Mr. Garvey's work has inspired millions of people who have gone after him. Do we even acknowledge and tap into that strength? We heard earlier today that the strength of that seed is in your veins. It is in your veins. We need to honor and acknowledge it. Once we are conscious of our thoughts and our actions, we can start making better choices for each other and our community. My topic about harmony represents two things. It is very difficult as a people to make progress when you're in conflict. When there's conflict in your world, in your life, in your home, it's very difficult to actually step out and progress. We need to create harmony within the home because everything in your home reflects the society. If you're in a house where there's yelling and doors slamming and no one's listening to anybody, you're going to have a difficult time supporting each other. If you step out of your house and there's a lot of conflict and a lot of tension, you're going to have a difficult time having leadership values and being able to forge ahead. Internal harmony, to me, means taking care of yourself. Without the body, what are we? We don't have a lot going on without the body. Now, whether you're from Jamaica, Trinidad, wherever you're from, remember great granny or granny used to talk about purge, wash out, detox your body? That is the number one key to health. We cannot forget that. Without a strong body, we don't have a lot going for us. And in today's society, I like to say we are orphan children in a foreign land eating foreign food. The foods in this country may not be congruent with the foods that we know as a people. So we need to invest a little bit of knowledge and get some detoxification going out. Create internal harmony within your being. Pay attention to your internal health. Without strong cells, you're not going to last too long. So find the knowledge from Granny and Auntie and anyone you know. Look for the mentors in our community to get educated. We have a very intelligent body. Every 28 days we have new skin. Our cells are regenerating every second of every day. very, very important. I want to talk about external harmony. What do I mean by that? My definition of harmony means I'm going to live in a way that I'm not harming me, and I'm not harming you, and I'm not harming the planet. That's my definition. How can I live without harming others or the planet? You cannot get there unless you're conscious of what you're buying, of what you're choosing, what you're eating, what you're doing with your money. We have to pay attention to our actions. To pick up those seeds from Mr. Garvey means that we have to make sure we are acting in a positive, harmonic way to keep moving forward. So one example is, when I have harmony in my home, I'm at peace. My thoughts will be clear, and I can start to formulate the plans to make progress. If you're coming into an environment where there's tension and conflict, it's going to be very difficult. So let's pay attention to how we speak to each other, the time we spend with each other. It's very important. There was a time where I had 3 children under the age of 10, and my husband was sitting at the back there, will remember this. And I came home one day and I said, you know what? We don't need TV. So we called up Rogers, cut the cable, done. And that TV stayed off for 7 years. There was no Facebook back then, thank goodness. My kids are in their 20s now, but you know what? The best 7 years of parenting was those 7 years. And a couple of my girlfriends said, are you nuts? What you gonna do? What you gonna do? What you gonna do? I feel sorry for you, Dawn. I feel sorry for you. I said, don't feel sorry for me. I'm gonna get to know my children and they're gonna get to know us. Best 7 years of parenting. Conversations, life lessons, ancestral knowledge. I just want to share a quick personal story. My dad came to our home when we had our second child, 1990, and he brought a book, 2 books, and one book was called Cow's Milk is for Cows. That was the last time I bought cow's milk, okay? Small little book, about 50 pages, read it. He brought another book home called Detox or Die. It might sound a little dismal, but it taught us the importance of cleansing, keeping energy flowing in your body, keep the brain active, functioning, liver, kidney, organs, blood. Everything has to work in harmony. So I thank my dad, he's still alive and I love him. He opened our eyes to a lot of things. He brought us a lot of information about Black history, holistic health. Can you hear me? The reason I share that story is, even if it may not have been my dad, but I got some knowledge and wisdom from the elders. If you have the benefit of having them around, please reach out to them. It doesn't have to be blood like to move when I talk. All right. So everybody got their homework? Number 1, stay in bed when the alarm goes off. And you're gonna ask yourself a couple questions, right? Yes. Number 2, when you go home, late at night, and you're lying in bed, do not fall asleep until you do what? 5 things you're grateful for today. Sorry? What do I want to create in the morning? What do I want to create? How do I want to be? How do I want to speak? What will I contribute to today? Today might be your last day. Nobody knows. Today might be the last day. Conscious living, that's what that's about. I'm conscious of my actions. I'm conscious of how I respond to life. I don't believe in stress. I stopped believing in stress. In 2003, my heart decided to stop beating and I died. I realized what it was to be spiritual and I came back. And since that day, I don't believe in stress. That's another story for another day, but there's an elder native saying that if you learn to live in the giving and receiving of life, stress will not exist. If you learn to live in the natural giving and receiving of life, stress cannot exist. I did my hair, the rain's falling, I get upset. Why? We need the water, the grass is turning brown. Be grateful it's raining. Forget the hair. Fix it next Saturday. Seriously. Okay? We had a long winter. I don't know about you, we live out in the boonies, so we had snow up to here. And then it got hot one day in June. Oh my gosh, it's so hot. People complaining, oh, I need the AC. I said, are you kidding me? Thank God it's hot. Remember when it was minus 20? Okay, and we had ice? So be grateful for what you have. We create stress when we anticipate and we're in the future. I want, oh, when I get this, then this, and when, da. You're imagining. Takes up a lot of mental energy. That's not how you liberate your mind. When you live in the past, I shoulda, woulda, coulda. It's over. Let it go. Living in the past, living in the future creates mental stress, anxiety, resentment, anguish. Mr. Garvey lived in the present. What can I do today with the breath flowing through me to uplift my people? So think about it when the alarm goes off tomorrow. And after you've lived the day through tonight, ask yourself, what am I grateful for? When you liberate your mind, you will liberate your body. So I close with this. We are all branches of a tree. And that tree trunk represents our community. It represents the motherland where we're all from. There's a common thread in everyone's veins running through this room. We are creative, intelligent, powerful people. Mr. Garvey planted a seed. It's up to us to plant more seeds. Make some more trees. So in honor of his memory, I want you to remember the strength, the character, the values, all of these characteristics that he demonstrated. It runs through us. So by living consciously and living in harmony, you're going to have the energy that it will take to foster and continue his work. Thank you.
That was awesome, wasn't it? That was really awesome. fellowship, because this is a wonderful way to fellowship, because we learn. It's giving and taking and absorbing. It's wonderful. Miss James, you made my day. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Because I always say, no one will take care of you but you. And you should always spend some time with yourself, doing what is necessary to take care. Because the temple is all you have, and the spare parts are not so good. So you have to take care of the parts you have so that everything will come into the wash. Now, I have a commercial for you. You know, in everything we do, you have to have a commercial break. And this is a really good piece of commercial. And that is their Minister Farrakhan is having the 19th anniversary of the 1 Million Man March. He'll be speaking in Jamaica, Kingston, Jamaica, on October the 19th, 2014. And if you're in Jamaica, you make sure you pay attention to that. And if you're not in Jamaica, I am sure you can tune in via the internet, the great equalizer. That gives us good communication from all over the world. So don't forget that now. The 19th anniversary of the Million Man March, Minister Farrakhan will be in Kingston, Jamaica on October the 19th, 2014. All right. You're still with me? All right. Now, Mr. Zimba, where are you? We are going to give you a little bit of entertainment now. No, not Zimba. He's not a singer, a dancer, or anything. Not Zimba. No, no, no. Don't leave, please. It's not Zimba that's going to sing. Mr. Zimba will do the introduction of our entertainer. Would you please put your hands together for our next entertainer? Oh, before we have our entertainer on, has everybody picked up their Jamaica Day flyer? Because there will be, please make sure you pick up the Jamaica Day flyer. Jamaica Day will be on Saturday, August the 30th, 2014. Do bring out your friends and family. This is a nice family culture and musical festival. Jamaica Day has been with us for how long, Brother Logie? This is the 24th Jamaica Day celebration. And you know something, ladies and gentlemen, in this so-called multicultural society that we have, where everything, even when you go for funding, if you don't have Marrakesh and Marrakesh and Jamaica and Marrakesh, you can't get funding because it's this melting pot that they want to put everybody in. Jamaica Day says we are celebrating Jamaica's cultural heritage. You cannot water down culture. Culture is something you strengthen. So do bring your friends and family out. Make sure we can keep Jamaica Day going. And we have a whole lot of entertainers. That is, there is the Manhattans, there is Half Pint. The last time I saw Half Pint, it looked like a full quart to me. There is Jimmy Reed, there is Tasha T, Visionary, Naga Morris, Junior Whisper, and Michelle. So we have a pick up your flyer and read. Would you please? That is supposed to be a really, really, really good day. And I never miss Jamaica Day. I always go to Jamaica Day because I'll never forget one year I was going to Wildwater Kingdom and I saw this lady, this black lady, dressed out in Jamaica. Everything she had was the Jamaican flag. She even had an umbrella. And about 2 weeks before my daughter was going to Jamaica, and brought me to her bedroom and showed me everything she was taking home that was Jamaican. And she was born here, so I just saw it and said, well, authentic Jamaican don't have to do that. And she was not pleased because she says she's Jamaican. She was born here, she's not Jamaican. Anyways, I saw this lady decked out in her everything Jamaican. And I said to her, I said, you know, you look really lovely, but you know, authentic Jamaicans don't dress like that, you know. She said, I'm not sure, me have to represent. So Jamaica Day is a wonderful, wonderful event, and I'm telling you, and Brother Logan, I have prayed that there is no rain this year. And I'm asking everybody to pray, because for the last few years, Jamaica Day has been rained out. The trees and the grass is benefited from the rain. So Jamaica Day has been blessed in the last few years. So we want blessings in great abundance without the rain this year. So we pray. And I have one more commercial. And what did I do with that? Oh yes, here it is. This is Aki Festival on Sunday, August the 17th, where Aki will meet saltfish and mackerel will meet rundown and veggie dish, roast breadfruit, fried dumpling, blue draws. Do you know what that is? Fried plantain. Please educate the foreigners for us. Fried plantain, hominy porridge, chocolate tea, ital stew, jerk chicken, but it is Aki 2014 Fest. Isn't that lovely? Yes. That will be here, and it doesn't tell me the time, or I'm not, it's 11 to 7, so 11 in the day, it's Sunday, August the 17th, 2014, from 11 to 7 p.m. Ticket in advance is $20 and at the door is $25. Children under 12, $10. And this is what the flyer looks like. I'm going to assume that the flyers are here, because this is really wonderful. This 11 o'clock you can come out for brunch. And remember that a tin of Aki sometimes costs $10, so if you can get it for $25, come out and have breakfast. Because this is a good thing. A good thing. This is what we call culture. You know, keep culture alive and well. And I want to take this time to introduce you to two people that's in this room. And it's important for us to celebrate each other when we get together. And for those of you who do not know Dudley Law's wife and daughter, I would like them to stand so you can acknowledge them. You see, the good thing about having children is that you send them into a time that you will not see. And it's good to have Dudley's offspring and family with us, because, you know, that's a man that gave us a really large portion of his life to a community. And listen to this carefully, I'm not mincing my words. To a community that sometimes our community is extremely ungrateful. Extremely ungrateful and ungracious. But for those of us that have been resisting for a long time, we do it because it is the right thing to do. And we don't mind if you benefit. Because Martin Luther King says, only the committed and dedicated few that make this world a better place. Don't forget that. I turn you over now to Brother Zimba to introduce our next entertainer.
Thank you. And please give Valerie a big round of applause for the great work she's doing. just want to take this opportunity to thank everybody for coming out today. It wasn't, in terms of quantity, a large crowd, but in terms of quality, it's just like Valerie said, only the committed few. And those of us here today represent the committed few. Now, I want you to take in consideration that it says it only takes a pinch of yeast to make a pound of flour rise, right? And that's what we represent, that element that could help transform our community, not just in this generation, but for succeeding generations, right? Marcus Garvey had a mantra, one God, one aim, and one destiny. Now, Marcus Garvey, he taught me something very important, which was to look at God through the spectacles of Ethiopia. All right, thank you. To look at God through the spectacles of Ethiopia. Now, for me, it's very important that we have a proper understanding of the Almighty, the God of our worship and our adoration. Because traditionally, we have been taught, right, to worship the God of ages, right, the Rock of Ages, the Ancient One, right? And yet, somehow or the other, in our universal suffrage, it seems that we have not only lost knowledge of ourselves, but our knowledge of God Almighty, right? To the point where we have been tricked, right, into giving our love and our adoration to another. I'll ask you, for example, most of us here are adults, parents, and we speak so much, Dawn spoke about our children, everybody speaks about the future generation, right? And so I asked myself as an adult, as a shepherd, would I counsel a little lamb to seek refuge in the den of a wolf during the time of a storm, right? And I don't think any of us in our right minds will tell a little lamb to seek refuge in the den of a wolf, because obviously that lamb will be devoured. Yet, even though in our right minds, none of us will do this, right? We are still guilty of doing that same thing. I'll tell you why. I work in the school systems, I work with youth, and I see how they're suffering, our black youth, our black children. And the Bible says the children's teeth are on edge because the fathers eat sour grapes. Meaning this, we as adults accept the unacceptable. And then we try to encourage our children to do the same. So even when there is a wolf among us, dressed in sheep's clothing, and we look, it looks like a wolf, it smells like a wolf, but it's wearing the white garb, right? We think it's a sheep. No, we don't think. We tell our children it's a sheep. And like, so Kate's sake, you could go with this wolf in sheep's clothing because he has all the earmarks. He belongs to an institution, religion, whether it's Catholic, Protestant, or whatnot. As a result, the wolf comes to us dressed in colors that look familiar. For example, Jesus Christ, right? When Herod wanted to kill him, he sought refuge in Ethiopia. The Bible says Egypt, but Egypt is in Africa, and southern Egypt is Ethiopia. How do we know this? Jesus Christ spoke a language called Amharic. The only place in the world that speaks Amharic is Ethiopia. And Ethiopia's colors are red, gold, and green. Right? So when we speak about a wolf in sheep's clothing, we take a look at this picture. And we see the red, the gold, and the green. And we tell our children, this is your God. He is the only way. Now I ask you, is this not abuse? If we love our children so, why are we teaching them to see the love of God in the person who declares themselves to be our enemy? This, ladies and gentlemen, is the greatest form of abuse because it separates us from the love of the Almighty. Does this representation look like the Rock of Ages? There's nothing ancient about the Caucasian. We know that. Their surgeon on our planet maybe 6,000 years.
Nothing ancient about the Greeks. Nothing ancient about the Romans. Nothing at all ancient about the Caucasians who are now here with us in this realm. Until we gave birth to them, until the black woman gave birth to them. And I'm saying to you today that this is no longer acceptable. And yet, I've been to Ghanaian churches, Nigerian churches, and Jamaican churches that still teach our children to worship this as their God of adoration. And this is totally unacceptable. Right? So, when we speak of one God, it's really important for us to reconnect and realign, not with the person of God, but with the characteristics and the attributes of God. Can I ask anybody in this room, what is the most powerful energy that exists in the world, the most powerful definition of God that you know? Love. Right? Is love a theory? Is it a social theory or is it a social practice? It's supposed to be a social practice. Right? And so when we talk about all of what ails us, right? We know the answers in our hearts already, because all I have to do is say to you, fill in the blank. Blank conquers all. Love conquers all. You understand? So now we have been kind of skirting around the issue, right? In terms of how do we engage in the social practice of one love, right? It is no coincidence that one love is the song of the millennium. Because when asked, the heart speaks rightly, right? So when the people were surveyed, right, regardless of race or nationality, they knew that one love had to be the song, right? Because one love represents us, right? We are the people of the millennium, whether we realize it or not. We are the ancient ones. We are the only ones, by the way, spoken of in the Bible as a peculiar people. Our here, if you notice, is of lamb's wool. Right? Nobody else. Think about it. All the other nations. Okay, there are 4 great nations on our planet. We have the European, the Indian, the Chinese, and the black. So the Indian, the Chinese, the white, and the black. And I'll let you know, based on my observation coming into this realm, the Chinese people, now let's begin with the Indians. The Indian people now say, and they boast, we have enough nuclear weapons that could destroy the world 2 times over. Both India and Pakistan have their nuclear weapons, and they're proud of that. The Chinese say, we have nuclear weapons that could destroy the world 20 times over, and they're proud of that. And the Europeans say, we have nuclear weapons that could destroy the world hundreds of times over. Now, what kind of mindset would even cultivate such a weapon to destroy the earth that gives them life? You understand? Yet we as African people, have we cultivated any such weapons? Any such mindset? No. Because we intuitively know that of our divine responsibility here on earth. And I want you guys to understand something. In order to heal this world, Africa has to be redeemed. Once Africa is truly redeemed, then we can heal the world, right? And we can no longer afford to say, it doesn't matter. Because to say it doesn't matter, right, is to say, even though Africa is the wealthiest continent on the planet and has the poorest people, it doesn't matter. How could that be? We have all the gold, the diamond, the uranium, the plutonium, all the natural resources, and yet we are the poorest inhabitants. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to cultivate the moral courage to represent the truth of our birth, of who we are, right? At this moment, I want to share with you a poem that came through as an insight. As an insight to this movement called the One Love Foundation. And the poem, ironically, is called Rebirth. And I think it's important that we share this today so that you can understand the power inherent in what is happening here in the city of Toronto. When it was said that Marcus Garvey left the baton, I want you to understand something very interesting that relates to you, specifically you each and every individual in this room, right? Because the Almighty has brought you here, not only here in this occasion for this event, but to live here in the city of Toronto. Because Toronto is the meeting place, it's the world's gathering place, the most multiculturally diverse city on our planet. And so therefore, there are two of every nation in Toronto. It's like Noah's Ark, two of every kind, right? And you and I represent one of those kinds. So the question is this: if we are to raise a standard of righteousness here, if we are to set an example for the black world here, would it not resonate 360 degrees square? Would we not be setting an example for our brothers and sisters worldwide? For example, across the hallway right now, we have the Nigerians. They're having a celebration, whether it's a wedding or a banquet or what have you. Guess what? In that room, there are both Christians and Muslims here in Toronto celebrating together. But in Nigeria, the Christians and Muslims are fighting against each other. Right? Yet in Toronto they get along. The same thing with the Pakistanis and the Indians. When they come to Toronto, they do business well together. But in their homeland, they're fighting each other. I'm saying there's something peculiar about the way that this world is structured that sets us up to fight against one another. And this is why we need this rebirth. Christ spoke of this when he said you must be born again. And the poem that we received in the city, because Garvey came to the city in 1937 and 1938. This was the last city that he had a UNIA convention. His last two conventions were here. So whatever baton Garvey left, he left here. And one of the examples he left here. And one of the examples he left was this. He started a school of leadership here. So therefore there's a spirit of leadership here. It might be latent, but it needs to be awakened. So I'm going to share this insight with you in the form of a poem. It's called Rebirth. It's time for rebirth because the current course of Mother Earth is parallel to being lost. It is all being encompassed in the making and passing of man-made laws. Yet, Western man shows no remorse as he breaks his own laws and as his greed blinds all with his negative force. It's time to take charge and manifest the truth of our birth. And it's time we make lasting peace on earth that reverberates the outer and inner universe. So, let love be our nature and divine be our worth, and the self will emerge as designed by our birth. Just as a scarab transforms through simple works, mind revolution is how. This is what we have learned. So let the scarab rule the earth and heal what hurts, so that no longer will we be pushed off course, or tricked, or trapped, or forced into means that endanger our cause. Taking heed from the Cushites and Moors, One Love has put a plan on the table, and as true leaders, we put first the people, strengthen the feeble, live life peaceful, whilst we defend against evil. So take time to align your spiritual mind with the Creator's grand design. Open your first eye and let the light shine bright both day and night with infinite might, and manifest divine works with the birth of your breath, and observe and adhere to the voice of your spirit, not just the call of your flesh. Earth's sphere is now ready to change this mental unrest. So while we bring about change, don't rest without willing to uplift yourselves, and don't sleep, because sleep is a cousin of death. Align right brain and left, then we'll be at our best when we step through this realm. When you need help, be grateful and blessed. And when you help others, come forth with truth and respect. The earth, planets and stars as spheres we reflect. One love is the solution. It's our first and last step. Ashe. At this time, I want to introduce a good friend of mine, Carmen. Carmen is going to sing a song for us today about Garvey's second mantra, which is one aim. And the aim is this. Some of the speakers spoke about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and the influence that Marcus Garvey had on those gentlemen. And Carmen has composed a song as a tribute to all three gentlemen. So could you please give a round of applause for Carmen and his saxophone?
Yes, everybody. One love to you. It's an honor to be here tonight to present this song for you. So right now, I'm going to sing this song for you, and it's all about Marcus Garvey. Okay? No. We. Run it. Thank you. Has anybody here seen my old friend Marcus? Can you tell me where he's gone? He freed a lot of people and somehow we do die young. And I look around, he was gone. Has anybody here seen my old friend Marcus? Can you tell me where he's gone? He freed a lot of people and somehow we do die young. And I look around, he was gone. Has anybody here seen my old friend Martin? Can you tell me where he's gone? He freed a lot of people and somehow he do die young. And I look around, he was gone. Didn't they love the things they stood for? Didn't they try to find some love for you and me? Just be free someday soon. Has anybody here seen my old friend Martin? Can you tell me where he's gone? I thought I saw him walking over the hills, and I look around, he was gone. The next one called Everything I Own. I'm going to give that. Thank you. You sheltered me from storm, keep me warm, keep me warm.
Come on, round of applause for Tolman, please. All right, thank you. Now, Tolman put a question to us. He said he was wondering where Marcus went, where Martin went, where Malcolm went. As for Marcus, Marcus said these words. He says, look for me in the future. Look for me in the whirlwind and the storm. And I will come back with countless millions to help you in your final struggle towards liberty and life. So obviously our final struggle is the attainment of that one destiny, that freedom that we all seek. Now, earlier in the poem we talked about being tricked and trapped and led off course into means that endanger our cause. And I'd like to clarify what I mean by saying these words to you today. That the way we were tricked is when we thought they meant emancipation, they were abolitionists. They were abolitionists. There's a difference between a person who is an abolitionist and somebody who's for emancipation. The abolitionists, ladies and gentlemen, only wanted to abolish the slave trade, the human cargo being transported from Africa to the Americas. They were not interested in emancipating us. Understand the difference. They wanted to keep us in servitude, right? So when we speak of emancipation and abolition, the abolitionists, there's two different agendas, okay? So Wilberforce, who was an abolitionist, he was not interested in emancipation. In fact, he said, our quest is not to free the slaves, but to control them and gradually release the human bondage, but we always will maintain control over them. How do we know this is true? This week, Jamaica celebrated its independence. Nigeria celebrated its independence. Ghana celebrated its independence, right? But guess what? None of them are sovereign. I want you to understand the difference, okay? Feel me? To be sovereign is to be self-governing, not to be subject to the Queen Bee of England. You understand where I'm coming from? Whose court still presides over our jurisdiction. Are we not a part of her commonwealth? You understand? So how could we say we're independent? I'll let you know, ladies and gentlemen, that racism is a serious issue. Growing from a cell to skin tissue. We must know the truth from a lie. So I pose the question, why? Why did they have to blind us? Justice really means just us. We must cease violence from the police. It's just an old thought. Master's grade, made new, right? The ones who hate perpetrate our protection. Remember, we are still under their protectorate. The ones who hate perpetrate our protection. How could we truly say we are free when we are not sovereign in our own country? Ladies and gentlemen, please consider what we're talking about, because we have a lot of work to do to experience our true and unadulterated liberation. Now, next I have on the agenda a special guest who is a colleague of mine, a wonderful friend of mine, and she's going to share a poem with us today about freedom. So please put your hands together for our beloved sister, beloved Nasiba.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I wrote a poem tonight about freedom, and it's for us who come to this country and we get locked up with credit card bills, all kind of bills, and you can't see yourself financially elevating. So I wrote this in a mindset that I was locked down financially. So I hope you enjoy. Lord, I'm I'm freeing myself from the yoke of bondage, the mental stress, the confusion, the misconception, the illusion. It's been locked up all in my head. A dark place is where I made my bed. Unable to see, no light is around me. I cannot take it anymore, so I turn to the light that burns within me. My mind has been too long in captivity. Cannot see my way, worrying about my bills every day. A huge financial mountain has blocked me, tormented me. Oh, how I wish I could just throw it into the sea. So I turn to the light that burns within me. It's what keeps me going, trusting in its glow, that feels my pain, my worries, my shame, but yet the candle burns so bright and reflects such a magnificent light, an aura so bright. Who can resist such a light, a forceful light? The darkness cannot comprehend such a light. Its only mission is to totally consume me. But the candle burns furiously. A negative energy surrounds me, but a force of lightning strikes, expose and disappear the darkness. The lightning destroys every negative energy or matter in my sight that is trying to destroy me. Who can resist such a light? A forceful light. The vampire hates me because he wants to suck my blood and eat my flesh, and he can't come near me, for he knows he would be shattered. My light is so bright because the candle burns furiously. The vultures fly over me, waiting for the right moment to devour me. Fearless I stand because of the courage of the fire that burns within me. Connection to the universe is the oneness of my soul. A magnet shield the evil one cannot penetrate nor hold. Power and strength burns bright. Divine protection and guidance is the fuel to my life. I stand for truth and all that is right. But God in my blind state is always with me. The Lord is my light and my salvation. The Lord rebuked the devil and his fallen angels, for they cannot destroy me. What a love the Father has in heaven for me. In my weakest moment, God embraced me. In the valley of sorrow, the holy angels protect me. I'm a soul that is free, because the light that burns within me. I give thanks and praise for the release, the deliverance from the war I was fighting daily. My freedom of soul. My riches, I thank you.
Please give her another round of applause. Thank you very much. Beloved Siba. Thank you very much, Siba. At this moment in time, I'd like to also introduce another brother. Brother Klein is one of the young men in this community who has been bringing awareness to our ancient heritage here in this part of the world. Many people don't know this, but blacks were already in North America. We didn't all come via the slave trade. In fact, In 2006, bro, I invited a gentleman here. His name is Dr. Umar Shabazz Bey. And I was surprised when I realized this is a black man just like you and me, who born in Mississippi, right? He says these people have always been here. And in fact, during the International Day of Indigenous People, they went to Geneva, Switzerland to acclaim their territorial rights. And what happened is when America purchased the French Quarter from Napoleon, they annexed the indigenous territory. They just reached over, grabbed it, and controlled all of it. And so they went to the United Nations to affirm their sovereign identity. And Brother Prime, he's going to speak to us about Noble Drew Ali, whose relationship with Marcus Garvey goes back to the time when Marcus Garvey was in prison here in America, and the Moors, who would call themselves, worked to liberate him. So I'm going to ask you to give a hand for Brother Prime as he comes and just shares a little bit of this history with us.
Peace, everybody. Hotep to all my hematologists. Blessed love to all the Rastas. Assalamu alaikum. Mission Islam. And Islam to all the Moors. What we wanted to do, and what's up to everybody else, if you don't belong to any denomination or group or anything like that. We've been giving honors to Marcus Garvey all day, and it's good for us to do what Marcus Garvey says and canonize our saints, since he's recognized as such to us. During the time of Marcus Garvey's plight going against the U.S. Corporation, right? Identified as a government, but it's not really a government. It's actually a foreign European colonizing force that goes around the world, tormenting, pillaging land that's not theirs. They took the position that they're going to make Marcus Garvey out to be a criminal, right? They're going to use mail fraud, things like that, to try to get the people's faith away from what Marcus Garvey was really teaching our people. And what Marcus Garvey was teaching our people was that we have to gravitate toward nationhood. Marcus Garvey was teaching our people that we have to gravitate towards unity. Marcus Garvey was teaching our people that we have to gravitate towards self-sufficiency. That's why the name of the organization was meant to improve the Negro. We weren't supposed to stay there in that organization. The objective was to improve the Negro, to make the Negro better. Because obviously, based on experience, the status of the Negro is not respected. People calling themselves Negro and black and colored, etc., they're not respected by the world. This is why we have situations like people saying that they came from Africa, but no African nation has came and claimed it yet. Publicly, openly. Find me one. We're not talking about individuals. We're talking about nations that said, oh, those guys over there in Toronto that said they came from Ghana, I'm the Ghanaian whatever representative, and we got the boats at the dock. You guys just go down to the dock, get on the boat, and come back home. That's what they're supposed to be doing. Right? Right? Now, and just to put it on the mic, His Imperial Majesty took that position of going to the people in the diaspora and letting them know that, your brothers and sisters with the people over here, right? Now, another individual that isn't talked about with relation to Marcus Garvey is a man by the name of Noble Drew Ali. And Noble Drew Ali was born in North Carolina in 1886. And he's not spoken about because he had the same dreams, aspirations, etc. as Marcus Garvey. And when you do your own research on Noble Drew Ali, you find out that they had a very relative similar ideal and perspective that they were presenting to the people. And two things that I wanted to read, just to put on the record, with regard to this connection, is a letter, or sorry, a postcard that was sent from Noble Drew Ali to his wife, Pearl Ali, right? And this is in 1927, right before Marcus Garvey got deported. And right before President Calvin Coolidge issued, we would call it, immediate release of Marcus Garvey, right? So the postcard reads as follows. Dear wife, I have been to see Mr. Garvey at the federal prison. I will be home Friday or Saturday. Love to all from your husband, Noble Drew Ali. And we have this postcard. It's on the table in the back. If you want to get a copy of it, you can speak to Brother Camry, and he'll give you a copy of this. All right? There was a newspaper in Chicago called the Chicago Defender. And Chicago Defender was founded by a brother. And the brother's purpose of having the paper was to give our people, just like Marcus Garvey having a paper, Noble Drew Ali having a paper, Nation of Islam having a paper, getting our story told by us, not told by some foreigner that is assuming things about us, all right? In the newspaper, and again, this is documented, and the reason that we're bringing this up is because whenever you mention Marcus Garvey, you should be mentioning Noble Drew Ali, because they were relative. Because Noble Drew Ali also had 1 million members in the Moorish movement during the time of Marcus Garvey. He also had millions of members, right? And the reason that these two individuals are ridiculed and thrown under the bus by some of their own people, as well as, you know, colonizers and usurpers and everybody else, is because they were bringing our people back to legitimate, concrete identification of ourselves that's recognized worldwide. Everybody knows that we're Africans, according to Marcus Garvey, right? That's our descendancy. From a historical perspective, the word or the name of our people being called African is synonymous and used relative with Moors in history. Not our personal opinion, but if we go to UFT, professors of history or whatever, if we go to Cambridge University, Guelph or whatever like that, all those Europeans who pretend that they hate black people and call people nigger and stuff like that, they're studying our culture. So they can't hate us that much if they're studying our stuff. And they can't hate us that much if they're studying our stuff and using our stuff against us because we don't want to use it for ourselves. It actually shows that they honor our stuff, and we need to do a little bit honoring of our own stuff instead of honoring other people's stuff all the time. All right? So I'm just gonna read this quick article and get out of the way. Noble Drew Ali returns after a long visit south. This is the Chicago Defender, National Edition, November 19th, 1927. Noble Drew Ali, prophet, founder, and head of the Moorish National Divine Movement, has returned to the city after an extended visit in the south. Prophet Ali motored from Chicago, Illinois to Atlanta, Georgia, where he spent a few hours visiting Marcus Garvey in the federal prison. Key point, Mr. Garvey was very much pleased with the splendid, uplifting work being done by the Moorish Divine Movement. This is for all the people who claim that Marcus Garvey didn't know nothing about Noble Drew Ali and the Moors, and that it's, you know, it's secret to him, right? Even though there's documented facts that they met each other. The organization has launched a drive for more members. Persons desirous of learning of the great work that is being done are asked to write to the Prophet, 3603 Indiana Avenue, Chicago, etc. So we just want to put this out there for people to recognize that the Garveyites, or the people who have the perspective and love and honor of Marcus Garvey, need to consider a little bit what the Moors are saying, not because of anything other than the two founders of these organizations knew each other. So the same way that we can ramble off stuff about Marcus Garvey and have celebrations and stuff like that, equal, we gotta do that for Noble Drew Ali. The same way we know the history of Marcus Garvey, and we can just run it off, right? We should know the history of Noble Drew Ali as well. Run it off. Same way that we know the history of Marcus Garvey, we should know the history of Elijah Muhammad, right? We should know the history of Fard Muhammad. We should know the history of Ben Amin and all these people, because all of it is relative information for our salvation. Everybody has a piece of this core concept called nationhood, and everybody expresses it in their own way. But it doesn't mean that we got to be against each other because of these different concepts, right? It doesn't mean that because, you know, the sisters are dressed how they're dressed, in their traditional, according to their studies, that, you know, somebody else is going to look at them different when we have the same complexion. We're all family around here. And we don't treat each other like family. We treat each other like we all belong to different groups, and then we have to acknowledge each other based on our group. It's not a group. If we talk to, same thing like Brother Simba was talking about. If we go to Chinese people, and there's a Chinese event, all of them say that they're Chinese. They're not saying, well, no, we're at a Chinese event, but then we're Christian Chinese, and then we're Muslim Chinese, and then we're Buddhist Chinese, and then atheist Chinese, or whatever. They recognize themselves as who they are. So the objective, even if you don't want to acknowledge yourself as quote unquote Moors, right? We should highly consider recognizing ourselves at least as indigenous, and get rid of the Negro, black, colored, African, and all that stuff, and just say that we're indigenous. Because we're actually the real indigenous people of the world. Everybody knows that. But if we don't say it, if we don't acknowledge our indigenous culture, then nobody else will. So I want to say give thanks to Simba and One Love, JNC, and everybody that was participating in this, because I'm pretty sure that the people who are here, they got something out of this, and they're going to leave here with a different mindset about Noble Drew Ali and Marcus Garvey, Nation of Islam, Wahhabians, whoever it is, because all of us are the same. We just have a different perspective, but the perspective all comes from the same source. So peace and love, and blessed love to everybody.
Thank you very much for the time. I want to please give him another round of applause. One brother time so eloquently spoke about, I refer to as unity, right? Now there's a difference between unity and uniformity. Uniformity means that we all have to dress the same, look the same, walk the same, talk the same. Unity is a symphony, right? Earth, Wind, and Fire says, unity is like love. Love is a symphony where hearts beat together in one melody, right? So you have the saxophonist, the trumpeter, the flutist, the organist, the bassist, but everybody harmonizes. And that's what unity should really represent, right?
Just to make a quick point.
Yes.
In that choir, each part is different.
Each part is different.
Right? So
yes.
We're not trying to be the same.
We're not trying to be the same. The tenor, soprano, alto have a different pitch. But guess what? Do you know remember back in the day when musicians are performing and they have a bass soloist or a drum solo and so on? But guess what? You know what the sweetest part of the music is? The chorus, when everybody harmonizes. And that's what we're missing in this community. We have a lot of individual players, but we haven't learned to harmonize, right? To sing the same chorus. right? And this is what, again, the root of what Prime is talking about, because we have to be sovereign and self-governing. Now, the last thing we want to speak to on the agenda is this information that you have before you, right? Here, as it speaks about a self-governing protocol. Does everybody have a copy of this? Does everybody have a copy? Yes, you do, right? Brother Kofi, you want to join me up here for a second, please? Now, Brother Kofi and I have been working in the city for some time, just trying to bring an awareness to the community, right? Could anybody finish this question? Seek ye first. What does the word kingdom represent? Land, government, land, sovereign land, right? Jesus Christ said the kingdom should be here on earth as it is in heaven. And for some reason, we've been tricked out into thinking life is a dress rehearsal. But we pretend as if this life is worth nothing, the real life comes after death. I'm saying to you, Bob said if you knew what life was worth, you would look for yours on earth. In other words, we have a responsibility to alleviate the misery that we are suffering here in this world, and to do it ASAP, right? And in order to do that, we have to be self-governing and self-reliant. Kofi, do you want to share some of the information that we have in regards to the way we need to self-govern?
Thank you, Brother Simba. So does everybody have a copy of this information in front of them, this protocol? Just make sure you do so you can kind of like follow along. The One Love Foundation, Black Action Defense Committee, Global Action Community Network. We're celebrating Garvey's 100th anniversary in UNIA in 1914. 2014 marks 100 years. So this definitely is a monumental time, but it's up to us. As Brother Siba mentioned earlier, Garvey having his final UNIA convention here in Toronto is almost like he left the responsibility up to us. And I know you heard the saying earlier, it takes a yeast of flour, or a pinch of flour, yeast, to make a whole pot of flour rise. So with that said, I think it's relative, because when you look at the turnout today, we should see a lot more people here, because we know this is a very busy time of year. There's a lot going on in this community. There's barbecue, so we definitely give, acknowledgement to that, but the responsibility is still ours, and that moral courage that Brother Simba talked about, we need to start developing. So this is a first stage that we have to kind of take advantage of. In the future, we're going to have more engagements, more things to spread the information out. Social media is definitely an area that we need to start using more. You mentioned earlier how Garvey didn't have that in the early 19th century, but he was able to still organize so many people across the globe. Garvey didn't even set foot in Africa. As crazy that might sound, he spoke so candidly about Africa, he spoke so passionately about Africa, but he never actually got to set foot on the African continent. But with that said, we do have a big responsibility here in Toronto, being the most culturally diverse city on the planet. So I'd like to read this protocol, this mission. It's healing violence with benevolence. The One Love Foundation, Global Action Communities Network, the Black Action Defense Committee, presents a plan of action for creating a benevolent society as we redress the issue of violence and generational poverty that currently plagues our Black communities. The One Love Foundation, GACN, which is inspired by the vision of Marcus Garvey, advances the cause of one God, one aim, one destiny, one love, as the pathway to achieving sustained peace and prosperity in our Black communities. The name Toronto is indigenous. It means the meeting place or the gathering place. According to the United Nations, Toronto is the most multiculturally diverse city on the planet Earth. All the world's nations are gathered here. Interestingly, Marcus Garvey concluded his mission here with his 7th International UNIA ACL Convention in 1938, based upon the principles put forward by Marcus Garvey. The One Love Foundation, GACN, is calling on Toronto Black community to establish a benevolent society whereby adults agree to practice mutual trust by investing $5 per month into a community investment trust fund. When 200,000 people each agree to invest $5 as a social practice on a monthly basis, our community will collectively save $1 million every month and $12 million every year, without relying on government handouts. The structure for this plan is rooted in the principles of the Tree of Life as a unifying framework and serves the cause of African redemption as well as the advancement of human civilization. The Tree of Life is an ancient system for attaining high civilization and presents us with the principles framework by which we too establish and sustain mutual trust. The funds we collect will be governed by a matriarchal council of elders. This elders council will consist of 14 honorable women of integrity and virtue in the GTA, 70 years of age and older, from Africa, the Caribbean, Canada, and Latin America. The council will act as the executive body and will oversee the transfer of $100,000 on a monthly basis to each of the 5 departments that include health, housing, business and entrepreneurship, or business and enterprise, education and heritage, and charity and philanthropy. This will leave us with an additional $500,000 to pay the salaries of the management and staff that are hired by the council. To save ourselves, our children, and our youth from self-destructive violence and perpetual poverty, as well as to restore mutual trust and integrity. Our aim is to build consensus as we create a benevolent society in our global African community. Sustainable change is here, so let us build consensus and stay connected. Can we count on you for your $5 a month investment? So basically, that's the breakdown. For more information, feel free to contact us at 647-289-0877 or 647-919-0466. Or you may visit us online with www.gacntoronto.com or on Facebook. So, Brother Simba, if you can come and elaborate more in depth, and you might have questions that you might want to ask.
Thank you very much, Brother Kofi. Could you give Brother Kofi a hand, please, for leading this course? Now, again, what we're talking about here is self-government and the need for us to practice a form of self-governance, right? We have here 3 levels of government, the federal, provincial, and municipal. And we're talking about establishing a governing protocol at the communal level, right? When it comes to our youth killing each other, when it comes to our youth failing in schools, and our young men overpopulating the prisons, you cannot look to Rob Ford to help you, right? You cannot look to Stephen Harper, and you cannot look to our premier, right? We need to look at ourselves, and that's all we're saying, you know? So let us consider what we learned today, and consider how we can put into practice what Marcus Garvey taught us about the need to be self-reliant and self-governing. All right, now I'm going to close off this afternoon's program. Brother Logie, Sister Valerie, I'm going to ask you guys to come up here, please. And I'm going to ask everybody to stand. And I'm going to ask that we come together in a circle. We're going to conclude by creating a unity circle. So could everybody come together, please, and formulate one circle around this room? Let's practice this unity that we've been talking about.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm only hoping that we all leave here this evening with a new sense of purpose. This is a start of a coming together that we'd love to see continue in a much positive way.